Marcus had always been curious about the unknown. He had grown up in a small town, where everyone seemed to know everyone else's business, and nothing exciting ever happened. From a young age, he had been fascinated by stories of strange creatures, mysterious lights in the sky, and people who claimed to have seen things no one could explain. Most of his friends thought these stories were silly or frightening, but Marcus loved them. They made him feel like the world was bigger than the narrow streets and familiar faces he had always known. One summer, he decided to take a break from his routine life and explore the desert on the outskirts of town. It was a place people avoided, mostly because it was vast, empty, and could be dangerous if you were unprepared. Still, Marcus felt drawn to it. There was something about the desert that whispered secrets, as if it held stories waiting to be discovered. He packed his backpack with essentials: a tent, a sleeping bag, food, water, and a few gadgets to record anything unusual he might see. He wanted to prove to himself that the stories were more than just rumors. Before he left, he visited the local store to buy supplies. While he was checking out, an older man named Henry, who had lived in the town all his life, pulled him aside. "Marcus," Henry said in a low voice, "you need to be careful out there. People talk about her. You know who I mean?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Who?" he asked. Henry looked around, as if someone might be listening, and then whispered, "The woman? The one that comes at night? People say she's dangerous. You don't want to get near her." Marcus laughed nervously. "You mean like a ghost?" he asked. Henry shook his head. "No ghost. Something else. Something different. Stay away." Marcus thanked him politely, but couldn't hide the spark of excitement in his eyes. Different meant interesting. As he drove out of town, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about Henry's warning. The desert stretched endlessly, golden sands meeting a clear blue sky, broken only by jagged rocks and occasional patches of scrub. He had planned to camp near a small canyon where the wind created strange sounds, almost like whispers. When he arrived, he set up his tent quickly. The sun was dipping below the horizon, and the sky was turning shades of orange and pink. The desert was quiet, peaceful, and beautiful, but Marcus felt a strange tension in the air, like something was watching him. He told himself it was just his imagination. That night, Marcus sat outside his tent, examining his equipment. He had a small drone he liked to fly to explore areas that were hard to reach. He switched it on, and it buzzed to life, lifting into the air. The camera feed showed the canyon walls and rocky terrain around him. Everything seemed normal, but then the screen flickered. At first he thought it was interference from the drone's battery. Then, the lights on his drone started to dim suddenly, as if someone had pulled the energy from it. Marcus frowned. That wasn't possible. He had fully charged it. He looked around the desert, scanning the shadows. Nothing. The wind had picked up, making the canyon walls whisper and hum. Then he saw it, a faint shimmer in the distance, moving silently among the rocks. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, and looked again. It was there, a figure, tall and thin, moving with a grace that seemed unnatural. Marcus felt a shiver run down his spine. His heart started beating faster, but curiosity pushed him forward. He grabbed a flashlight and shone it in the direction of the figure. Nothing. The desert was empty again, as if the figure had vanished into thin air. Marcus felt a mix of fear and excitement. He reminded himself of the stories he had grown up hearing, tales of creatures that only came out at night, that no one could explain. But he was a rational person. He told himself there must be a natural explanation. Maybe it was an animal, or a trick of the light. Still, something about the movement didn't seem like any animal he had ever seen. He decided to keep his camera running overnight, hoping to catch something unusual. Hours passed. The desert was quiet except for the occasional gust of wind and the soft rustling of small creatures in the sand. Marcus tried to sleep, but every sound made him sit up. He kept thinking about the figure he had seen. Then, around midnight, he felt a sudden drop in temperature. The air became colder, almost painfully cold. He wrapped himself in a sleeping bag, thinking it was just a desert chill, but it felt different, like the cold was being directed at him. Then he heard a sound, soft, almost musical, but not human. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Marcus froze. The desert had been silent, but now it was alive with a sound that was both beautiful and terrifying. He remembered Henry's warning, "Stay away." Suddenly it didn't seem like superstition. There was something here, something alive, something watching. He wanted to run, but he also wanted to see. His curiosity had never been stronger. Marcus slowly unzipped his tent and peeked outside. The moonlight illuminated the desert, casting long shadows. At first, he saw nothing. Then, the shimmer appeared again, closer this time. He could make out more details. The figure was tall, with skin that seemed to glow faintly in the moonlight. Her eyes reflected the moon like mirrors, and she moved without making a sound. Marcus's breath caught. This was not a human being. He didn't feel threatened yet, but he felt an awe he had never experienced before. She stopped a few meters away, tilting her head as if studying him. Marcus didn't move. He wanted to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. He tried to remember everything he had learned about staying calm in dangerous situations. But this wasn't dangerous, it was strange, beautiful, terrifying, intriguing. He noticed that she wasn't attacking, wasn't moving aggressively, and seemed hesitant, almost nervous. That puzzled him. If she were truly dangerous, she would have done something by now. Hours passed, and Marcus and the figure remained still, observing each other. He slowly began to take notes, writing in his journal what he saw. The figure seemed to mirror some of his movements, tilting her head, stepping lightly. Every time he tried to approach, she would step back. He realized she was cautious. She didn't understand him, and he didn't fully understand her, but there was an unspoken communication happening. Marcus's excitement grew. He was witnessing something extraordinary, something that most people would never see in a lifetime. By dawn, the figure moved toward the horizon and disappeared. Marcus felt a strange emptiness, a mix of relief and disappointment. He packed up his things, knowing he had to get back to town to rest and think about what he had seen. But he also knew he would return to the desert. There was something there, something alive and unique, something that needed to be understood. The next day, he visited the store again to speak with Henry, hoping for advice. Henry looked at him with a serious expression, noticing the tiredness in Marcus's eyes. "You saw her," he said simply. Marcus nodded. Henry sighed. "Most people would run, or never speak of it again. But she's not like anyone you've met. You have to be careful. She doesn't want to hurt anyone, but the world isn't kind to those who are different." Marcus left the store, feeling both nervous and thrilled. He couldn't shake the feeling that his life had changed forever. There was a presence in the desert, a being he could not explain, and he had been chosen to witness it. For the first time, the stories he loved were no longer just stories, they were real. And Marcus knew that the next time he returned to the desert, he would be stepping into a world that was beautiful, strange, and full of unknown dangers. But he also knew one thing: he would not be afraid. That night, Marcus lay awake in his own bed, thinking about the desert, about the figure, about the shimmering eyes in the moonlight. He wondered if anyone else had seen her, if anyone else could understand what he had seen. He knew that the desert held many secrets, but this one felt personal. It was as if the universe had opened a door just for him, a door he could never close. And although he didn't know it yet, this was only the beginning of a journey that would change his life forever. Marcus couldn't stop thinking about the desert figure he had seen. Her eyes, glowing faintly in the moonlight, haunted his thoughts. He spent the next few days reading every book he could find about unexplained phenomena, alien sightings, and mysterious creatures. But nothing matched what he had witnessed. Most of the time he felt frustrated. How could something so extraordinary exist and remain almost entirely unknown? His curiosity kept growing stronger, like a fire he couldn't put out. A week after his first encounter, Marcus decided he had to return to the desert. This time, he planned to stay longer, to observe more closely, and to be ready if she appeared again. He packed extra food, water, and equipment, night vision cameras, sensors to detect heat and movement, and a small drone with extended battery life. As he drove toward the desert, he felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. What if she wasn't there this time? What if he had imagined the encounter? But deep down, he hoped with all his heart that she would appear again. The desert looked different this time. Even though it was the same place he had visited before, the canyon walls seemed taller, the shadows longer, and the silence heavier. Marcus set up his tent near a rocky outcrop where he had seen her before. He arranged his cameras and sensors carefully, hoping to record every movement. He could feel the energy in the air, the same strange, almost magnetic pull he had felt during his first visit. He told himself to stay calm, to observe without interfering, but it was hard. He wanted to meet her, to understand her, but he also didn't want to scare her away. The first night passed without incident. Marcus watched the stars and listened to the desert wind, which whispered against the rocks like a secret language. He kept his equipment running and checked it constantly, but nothing unusual appeared. He tried to sleep, but every sound, the rustling of the wind, the shifting of sand, kept him awake. As dawn approached, he felt a strange mix of disappointment and hope. He hadn't seen her, but he knew she was out there that evening. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned shades of pink and purple, Marcus noticed something different. The temperature dropped sharply, colder than usual, and a soft glow appeared near the rocks. He held his breath. The shimmer of light grew brighter, and then she appeared. She was taller and more graceful than he remembered. Her skin seemed to reflect the moonlight even before the moon rose, faintly glowing like polished silver. Her eyes were deep violet, reflecting the desert around her like mirrors. Marcus froze. She looked at him carefully, moving slowly, almost cautiously. He could see now that she was not dangerous. Her movements were careful, hesitant, as if she were afraid of startling him. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The desert was quiet, the wind still, the air filled with tension and curiosity. Marcus realized that she was watching him as closely as he was watching her. It felt like they were trying to understand each other without speaking a word. He remembered the warning Henry had given him, the old man's serious eyes and whispered words. "She's dangerous." Marcus thought about it now, and realized he didn't believe she was dangerous. She didn't attack, she didn't make any threatening gestures, and there was no fear in her behavior toward him. Instead, she seemed lonely. He could feel a kind of sadness in her presence, as if she had been alone for a long time, unsure of anyone in the world. Slowly Marcus stepped closer. He wanted to show her he meant no harm. "It's okay," he he whispered, more to himself than to her. She flinched slightly, her eyes widening, but she didn't run. He extended a hand, palm open, a gesture of peace. She tilted her head, studying him, her body tense but not moving away. For the first time, Marcus realized that she might not understand human gestures, but she could sense intention. She sensed that he wanted to be a friend, not a threat. Hours passed as they stayed in that careful, silent communication. Marcus tried to speak softly, telling her about himself, about the town, about why he had come to the desert. She didn't respond in words, but sometimes she shifted closer, as if she wanted to be near him. He noticed that her skin had faint markings, like lines of light that pulsed gently. They were beautiful, almost like glowing patterns drawn by nature or some unknown energy. He couldn't stop staring. He had never seen anything like it, and the more he looked, the more he felt a connection forming between them. Marcus decided to try something new. He gently held out a small device that measured energy levels, a machine he had been experimenting with. He hoped to show her that he could help her without causing harm. The device emitted a soft glow, and she stepped closer, curious but cautious. Slowly, he adjusted it so it would draw only a tiny amount of energy, just enough for her to absorb without hurting him. To his relief, she leaned forward, and her violet eyes softened. It was the first time he felt she trusted him. Night after night, Marcus continued this careful approach. He would set up cameras, drones, and sensors, but most importantly, he would talk to her, offer small gifts, and show that he did not want to harm her. She began to respond in small ways. Sometimes she mirrored his movements. Sometimes she allowed him to approach closer than before. He realized that she was learning to trust him, slowly but surely. Marcus felt a sense of wonder he had never experienced before. He was not just witnessing something extraordinary, he was becoming part of her story. One evening, a small challenge tested their growing connection. A sudden gust of wind caused sand to shift violently, and Marcus's tent collapsed partially. He rushed outside to secure his equipment, and in the chaos, she recoiled, frightened. Marcus stopped immediately, holding up his hands in a gesture of calm. He waited patiently, speaking softly. After a long moment, she stepped closer again, reassured that he was not a threat. Marcus realized that trust would take time, and patience was the key. It was a lesson he had learned from observing her every cautious movement. As the days passed, Marcus began to notice more about her behavior. She seemed to avoid bright lights, moving only in the softer shadows of the desert. She reacted to energy in ways humans could not, sensing shifts in electrical fields or vibrations in the air. She was incredibly intelligent, observing everything around her carefully. Yet there was a gentleness to her that contradicted the frightening rumors. Marcus felt a growing admiration, and a strange kind of friendship forming. She wasn't dangerous, she was simply different. A being out of place in a world that didn't understand her. One night, under a full moon, Marcus decided to take a risk. He slowly approached her with his hand outstretched, showing a small bowl of water and some fresh fruit. She hesitated at first, but then leaned forward to inspect it. Carefully, she touched the fruit with delicate fingers, then stepped back. Marcus smiled softly. It was progress. For the first time, he felt a sense of real accomplishment. They were communicating in a way neither of them had done before. Marcus understood that she wasn't a creature to fear, she was someone who wanted to connect, to be seen and understood. The desert nights continued, and Marcus and the figure spent more time together. He gave her names for things she could not understand, and she responded in gestures and small expressions. Sometimes she would look at the stars with him, tilting her head as if asking questions about the universe. Marcus tried to answer, even though he wasn't sure she understood. Still, she listened, and that was enough. He felt a bond forming, a connection that went beyond words. He realized that she only wanted one thing, to be understood and accepted, even if the world around her saw her as a mystery or a threat. By the end of his second week in the desert, Marcus had learned a great deal about her. She was cautious, intelligent, gentle, and lonely. She was not dangerous in the way the townspeople feared. She was simply a being who had lived in isolation, trying to survive in a world that could never truly accept her. And Marcus, despite the warnings he had received, had come to care for her. He understood that fear often came from misunderstanding, and that sometimes the bravest thing one could do was simply offer friendship. As Marcus packed his things to return to town that final night, he felt a strange mix of joy and sadness. He had formed a bond with someone extraordinary, yet he knew their time together in the desert was limited. The world outside would not understand her, and she could not stay in the desert forever. Still, he felt grateful. He had learned something few humans ever experienced, that even the most unusual beings only wanted the same things people did: friendship, understanding, and care. When he looked back at the desert one last time, he saw her silhouette against the moonlight, tall, elegant, and mysterious. Marcus felt a connection stronger than words could express. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew this was only the beginning of a remarkable journey, one that would test his courage, his patience, and his capacity to love someone truly different from himself. And for the first time, Marcus understood the truth in Henry's words. She was not dangerous, she was extraordinary, and she only wanted to be seen for who she truly was. Marcus returned to town, but the desert and the mysterious woman occupied every thought in his mind. He could hardly focus on his daily routines. Every time he walked past the small store, the fields, or even his own home, he imagined the soft glow of her skin in the moonlight and the gentle tilt of her head as she observed him. He found himself longing to return to the desert, not just out of curiosity, but out of a sense of responsibility and care. She was alone, and he had a chance to understand and help her. Back in town, Marcus tried to share his experiences with friends and neighbors, but most of them laughed or shook their heads. "It's just your imagination," they said. "The desert can play tricks on your eyes." Even Henry, the old man who had first warned him, was cautious. "You're getting too involved," Henry said. "Some things are better left alone." Marcus nodded politely, but he knew he couldn't leave it alone. He had seen her, he had felt the connection, and now, more than ever, he needed to know the truth about who or what she really was. A few days later, Marcus returned to the desert. He brought extra supplies this time, more cameras, better sensors, and some small gifts he hoped she would accept. As he set up near the rocky canyon, he felt the familiar energy in the air, the magnetic pull that told him she was near. At first, he saw nothing, but as the sun set and the sky darkened, a soft glow appeared on the horizon. He smiled to himself, heart racing. She had come back. She approached slowly, her movements careful as always. Marcus noticed that she seemed even more delicate than before, almost like she was balancing on invisible threads. Her eyes, the deep violet that seemed to hold the desert sky, studied him for a long moment. Marcus didn't move, just held out a small bowl of water. She glanced at it, then back at him. Slowly, cautiously, she leaned forward and touched the bowl with her fingers. He could see relief in her posture. She was tired, thirsty, and hungry. Marcus realized that she had been surviving on her own for a long time, and that this simple act of kindness meant the world to her. Over the next several nights, Marcus focused on learning more about her, not just observing, but understanding her patterns, behaviors, and the small ways she interacted with the world. He noticed that she didn't speak, and probably never had in a way humans could understand, but she communicated in gestures, expressions, and what seemed like energy signals. Marcus discovered that she could sense his feelings and intentions. If he approached too quickly, she would recoil. If he spoke softly, she would relax. Slowly, he began to realize that their connection was not just one way. She was trying to communicate with him as much as he was trying to understand her. One night, Marcus decided to take a bigger step. He had been studying her energy patterns and realized that she relied on absorbing small amounts of energy from living things, not to harm them, but to sustain herself. Using a carefully designed device, Marcus offered her a controlled energy transfer, something safe and measurable. He held the device out to her, and for a long moment, she hesitated. Then, tentatively, she touched it. Marcus watched closely as a soft pulse of energy flowed into her. She seemed to relax immediately, her posture easing, her glow intensifying. Marcus realized she trusted him more than anyone had before. As the days passed, their bond deepened. Marcus noticed small changes in her behavior. She would approach him more quickly, linger nearby longer, and even mimic some of his movements. It was as if she wanted to learn about him and the human world. Marcus began to teach her simple gestures and actions, showing her how to interact without fear. He found joy in every small success. A smile, a glance, a moment of shared understanding. She was learning to trust, and he was learning to care deeply for her. But Marcus also realized the world outside the desert would never understand her. She was extraordinary, unlike anything anyone had ever seen. People would be afraid if they discovered her. She could not stay in the desert forever, and she could not live openly among humans without facing fear and misunderstanding. This knowledge weighed heavily on Marcus. He felt protective of her, responsible for her safety, and yet powerless to change the world's reaction. He knew that their time together in this desert was limited, and he treasured every moment, knowing that each night could be the last. One evening, as they watched the stars together, Marcus noticed something unusual. She seemed restless, shifting her weight, glancing toward the horizon. Marcus tried to comfort her, speaking softly and holding out his hand, but she didn't approach immediately. Then he realized that she was sensing something far beyond the desert, something distant and urgent. Her glow brightened slightly, and Marcus felt a subtle pulse in the air, a call, a signal from somewhere else. It was faint, but he could feel its significance. She had a world of her own, far away, waiting for her return. Despite this, she didn't leave immediately. Instead, she stayed near Marcus, as if torn between the safety of the desert and the pull of her distant home. Marcus understood. She had been alone for so long, surviving in a world that did not welcome her. Now, she had found someone who saw her for who she truly was. Yet she still carried the responsibility of her species, a life that existed beyond the desert. Marcus felt a mix of sadness and admiration. He knew that love or friendship sometimes required letting go, even when it hurt deeply. Over the next several nights, Marcus and the woman continued to share quiet moments. He would offer her water, food, and controlled energy transfers. She would sit nearby, sometimes close enough for him to feel the warmth of her presence. They watched the moon rise and set, studied the stars, and learned about each other in small, meaningful ways. Marcus felt a profound connection that went beyond words. He realized that she only wanted acceptance, understanding, and companionship, things every living being seeks in one form or another. One night a small accident tested their trust. A sudden gust of wind swept across the canyon, scattering Marcus's equipment. He rushed to secure it, but in the process, he knocked over one of the energy devices. She flinched immediately, retreating slightly. Marcus froze, realizing how sensitive she was to sudden movements and energy shifts. He knelt slowly, speaking softly, and reached out his hand in reassurance. Gradually, she approached again, this time more confidently. Marcus understood that trust had to be earned patiently, with care and consistency, and that every small interaction mattered. By the end of his third week in the desert, Marcus had come to know her in ways no one else ever could. He understood her energy patterns, her fears, her curiosity, and her need for connection. She was gentle, intelligent, and sensitive, yet she carried the weight of isolation that had lasted far too long. Marcus realized that the rumors about her being dangerous were completely wrong. She was not dangerous. She was simply different, misunderstood, and in need of someone who could see her true self. Marcus also learned something about himself. He discovered patience he didn't know he had, a deep empathy for beings unlike himself, and the courage to stand by someone who was entirely different. He realized that understanding required effort, observation, and a willingness to set aside fear. He had come to the desert seeking mystery, but he had found connection. He had come to observe, but he had become a participant in a story much larger than himself. As dawn approached one morning, Marcus sat quietly beside her. The first rays of sunlight painted the canyon in gold and pink. She glowed softly in the morning light, almost as if she were welcoming the new day. Marcus smiled, feeling a sense of peace he had never known. He understood that their bond was fragile, temporary, and precious. He didn't know how long she would stay, or when she might need to leave, but he knew that he had helped her feel safe, seen, and understood. He also realized that the world beyond the desert was not ready for her. Humans would fear what they could not understand. She could not live openly among them. And yet, Marcus felt hope. He knew that he had changed her experience of the world, just as she had changed his. They had discovered that even in a world full of fear and misunderstanding, trust and care could create a bond stronger than any rumor or prejudice. Marcus stood and stretched, looking around the canyon one last time before preparing to return to town for supplies. She watched him, her head tilted, as if asking him to stay. He whispered softly, "I'll be back." She blinked slowly, and Marcus felt a subtle warmth in her presence, a silent acknowledgement of the trust and connection they shared. It was a quiet moment, full of unspoken understanding. As he walked back toward his vehicle, Marcus reflected on the lessons he had learned. He realized that fear often came from misunderstanding, and that true courage was not just facing danger, but facing the unknown with an open heart. He understood that extraordinary beings like her were not monsters to be feared, but lives to be respected and cherished. And he knew that the desert held more mysteries than he could imagine, and that his journey with her was far from over. For the first time, Marcus felt that he was part of something bigger than himself. He had formed a connection that transcended words, species, and distance. He had discovered the truth behind the rumors. She was not dangerous. She was extraordinary. And above all, she only wanted what everyone truly wants: understanding, acceptance, and a chance to be loved. Marcus had been visiting the desert for weeks now, and his bond with the mysterious woman was stronger than ever. He had learned to understand her gestures, her subtle expressions, and even the faint pulses of energy she sometimes sent. Every night, he grew more aware of the care and patience it took to earn her trust. He had come to love these quiet, shared moments, watching her move with her gentle grace, and feeling the warmth of her presence in the still desert air. But that night, Marcus noticed something different. As he approached the canyon where he usually met her, he sensed tension in the air. It wasn't like the usual quiet calm of the desert nights. The wind whispered sharply across the rocks, carrying with it an unfamiliar scent and a faint vibration in the sand beneath his feet. Marcus paused, scanning the horizon. He had learned to trust these small instincts after all. They had led him to her in the first place. Something was approaching, and he wasn't sure if it would understand or accept her presence. From the shadows, figures began to emerge, several townspeople, armed with flashlights, ropes, and various equipment. Marcus recognized a few of them. They had begun noticing his nightly trips and strange behaviors. Rumors of the desert creature had spread, and fear had grown. Some people thought Marcus was in danger, while others suspected he had gone mad. Tonight, they had come to see for themselves. Their presence made the air feel heavy, as though the desert itself was holding its breath. Marcus's heart pounded. He knew he had to protect her, not with violence, but with understanding and communication. He stepped forward, hands raised to show he meant no harm. "Wait," he called softly, hoping the words would reach them before the tension escalated. "She's not dangerous." Most of the townspeople hesitated, but some continued forward, shining their lights and calling out. The glow of her skin, faintly illuminating the shadows, startled them. and panic rose in their voices. Marcus realized they would not understand her intentions. They had come with fear, not curiosity. The woman froze when she saw the people approaching. She tilted her head, scanning the group with cautious eyes. She didn't step forward or retreat at first. Instead, she seemed unsure what to do. Marcus quickly stepped closer, speaking softly to calm her. He gestured toward the townspeople, trying to show that she was safe with him. She hesitated, then took a tentative step toward him. Marcus could feel the fear in her energy, and he whispered, "It's okay. I'm here. Don't be afraid." The townspeople's fear, however, made them act impulsively. One man raised a rope, intending to corner her, while another shouted warnings. Marcus moved between her and the group, speaking firmly. "Stop, please. Listen. She isn't dangerous. She just wants peace." His voice carried across the canyon, steady but urgent. Slowly, some of the townspeople paused, uncertain. Marcus realized that fear often caused people to act without thinking. The key was to show calm, patient leadership, and he had learned that skill in the weeks he had spent with her. The woman watched Marcus carefully. Then, in a moment that felt almost magical, she released a gentle pulse of energy into the air. It wasn't harmful, not even strong, but it created a wave of calm that softened the fear around them. The townspeople staggered back slightly, blinking, sensing the unusual but soothing effect. Marcus smiled softly. He had never seen her do this before in such a controlled way, and he realized that she trusted him enough to respond to the danger without panic. One of the townspeople, a young woman named Clara, stepped forward cautiously. She had been skeptical of the rumors from the beginning but was brave enough to approach. Is she really safe?" she asked, voice trembling. Marcus nodded. "Yes. She doesn't want to hurt anyone. She's just different. Please, try to see her as I do." Clara nodded slowly, taking in the gentle energy she sensed and the way Marcus stood protectively beside her. Gradually, the tension began to ease. Though many still remained fearful, the woman took another step toward Marcus, her violet eyes meeting his. It was a silent communication, full of trust and reassurance. Marcus realized that she understood the situation and knew he would keep her safe. Slowly, she moved closer to him, and he extended his hand gently. The townspeople watched in awe as the two stood side by side, human and being, from another world connected by trust and understanding. It was clear that she had no intention of causing harm, and that realization began to settle in even the most fearful observers. Marcus spoke to the group again, patiently explaining what he had learned about her. He described her need for small amounts of energy to survive, the way she avoided harming anyone, and her intelligence and curiosity. The townspeople listened, some skeptically, others fascinated. Slowly, fear began to turn into wonder. The desert had hidden a being unlike anything they had ever imagined, and Marcus had helped bridge the gap between the unknown and the understandable. Throughout the night, Marcus continued to act as a guide and protector. He helped her navigate the presence of the townspeople, ensuring she remained calm and safe. He noticed that she responded more confidently now, her energy steady, her glow gentle. She seemed to understand that these humans could be dangerous only because they didn't know her, and that Marcus was there to guide the situation. It was a delicate balance, but one that Marcus had been preparing for. Even without realizing it, by dawn, the townspeople had retreated slightly, exhausted by the night's tension but unable to deny what they had witnessed. They had seen her, understood that she was not dangerous, and begun to accept the possibility that the desert held mysteries beyond their comprehension. Marcus stood beside her, proud and relieved. She looked at him with gratitude, a silent acknowledgement of his patience and protection. He realized that trust was not just between him and her, it extended to anyone willing to open their heart to understanding. After the townspeople left, Marcus and the woman spent a quiet morning together. He offered her water and some fruit, and she accepted with gentle gestures. The night's events had tested their connection, but it had also strengthened it. Marcus felt a profound sense of accomplishment. He had not only protected her, but also helped others glimpse her true nature. She was extraordinary, and the world had begun to see that through his guidance. That afternoon, Marcus reflected on the lessons of the night. Fear often comes from misunderstanding, and courage is not only about facing danger, but also about guiding others through it with patience and care. He realized that their bond was more than friendship, it was a partnership, a connection built on mutual trust, respect, and the willingness to stand up for one another. He had learned that being extraordinary didn't mean being alone, and that understanding could bridge even the widest gaps between beings from different worlds. As night fell again, the desert seemed calmer. The glow of the woman's skin reflected the stars above, and Marcus felt a quiet peace in the canyon. He knew that their journey was far from over. Others might still fear her, but he had shown that fear could be softened with patience and understanding. He had learned that true connection required courage, empathy, and the willingness to face the unknown without judgment. That night, Marcus and the woman sat together, observing the moon rise. She rested close to him, and he gently extended his hand, allowing her to feel the comfort and trust that had grown between them. They had faced fear together, and the experience had deepened their bond. Marcus realized that love and understanding often come with challenges, but that facing them together could create a connection stronger than any rumor, fear, or misunderstanding. For the first time, Marcus felt a certainty about the future. He didn't know how long she would stay in the desert or what challenges might arise, but he knew that they could face them together. He had learned that extraordinary beings like her were not threats, they were lives to be respected, cherished, and understood. And he had discovered that the greatest gift one could offer was patience, empathy, and the willingness to see beyond fear into the heart of someone truly unique. As dawn broke over the canyon, Marcus packed his gear and prepared to return to town for supplies. She watched him, her violet eyes calm and steady. Marcus whispered, "I'll be back tonight. We'll face whatever comes together." She tilted her head slightly, as if acknowledging the promise, and Marcus felt a quiet warmth in the energy between them. It was a silent agreement. No matter what challenges appeared, they would face them together, with trust, patience, and understanding. Marcus had been spending many nights in the desert with the mysterious woman. Their bond had grown stronger with every shared moment, every careful gesture, and every quiet observation of the desert under the moonlight. He had come to know her in ways no one else could, and he had discovered that her presence was more than extraordinary, it was life-changing. The desert, which had once felt empty and quiet, now seemed alive with their connection, humming with energy that only they could sense. But Marcus knew that their time together could not last forever. Over the past weeks, he had noticed subtle changes in her energy patterns, signals that something beyond the desert was calling her, distant pulses that hinted at her home, a place far beyond Earth. She had not spoken in words, but he could feel the longing in her presence, a quiet awareness that her life could not be contained within the desert's boundaries. He tried to imagine what that world must be like, filled with others of her kind, a place where she truly belonged. Yet he could not deny the sadness that came with this realization. He had grown attached to her, and she had become a part of his life in ways that made leaving her behind unimaginable. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Marcus noticed the faint glow of her markings intensifying. She seemed restless, moving from rock to rock, her movements more deliberate and anxious than usual. He approached slowly, careful not to startle her. She looked at him with her violet eyes, and for a long moment, neither spoke, but he could feel the question forming in her presence. What will happen now? Marcus knelt and reached out a hand, brushing it gently against hers. "I don't know," he whispered softly, "but whatever happens, we'll face it together." She tilted her head, sensing the sincerity in his words. Marcus had learned that trust was not built in a single moment, but in the consistency of actions, the small gestures that showed care and patience. He hoped that what they had shared would be enough to give her courage for the choices ahead. As night fell, the stars filled the sky, casting their soft light across the canyon. Suddenly, a faint shimmer appeared on the horizon, a subtle glow that pulsed differently from her own light. Marcus understood immediately. It was a signal, a call from her people. She moved toward it instinctively, as if responding to a call she could not ignore. Marcus felt a pang of fear mixed with understanding. He knew that this was her chance to return to a place where she truly belonged, but it also meant that they might never see each other again. He stepped closer, trying to convey his feelings without words. "I want you to go if it's what you need," he said softly, "but I don't want to lose you." She hesitated, her glowing markings flickering like soft pulses of light, as if unsure of what to do. Marcus understood her dilemma. She had a home, a life beyond this desert, but she had also grown attached to him. Their bond was real, powerful, and deeply emotional. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing on her. For several minutes, they stood together in silence. Marcus felt her energy shift, a mixture of longing, sadness, and hope. He realized that this was not just a choice about leaving the desert, it was about choosing between her old life and the bond they had created. He reached out again, gently holding her hand. "Whatever you choose," he whispered, "know that I will remember you, and I will honor what we've shared." She leaned closer, brushing her head against his shoulder. Marcus felt a warmth in her presence, a silent expression of gratitude and affection. The faint glow on the horizon grew brighter. Marcus could feel her energy responding to it, a pull that seemed impossible to resist. She stepped back slightly, her eyes meeting his, and he understood. She had made her decision. She would return to her people, her home, but she would carry the bond they had formed with her. Marcus felt a mixture of sadness and pride. He had been part of something extraordinary, and now he would have to let her go. Before leaving, she leaned forward, touching his chest lightly. Marcus felt a pulse of warmth, an energy he had never felt before, spreading from her hand into his heart. It was her way of saying goodbye, of sharing the emotions she could not put into words. He closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the depth of their connection. He knew that this was a gift she had given him, trust, affection, and the knowledge that he had been seen for who he truly was. Slowly, she began to move toward the shimmering light. Marcus watched as her form became brighter, more radiant, until she seemed to blend with the glow itself. He felt a mixture of fear and wonder, fear of losing her, and wonder at the beauty and power of her presence. She paused for a brief moment, looking back at him one last time. Marcus waved gently, his heart full of emotion. She responded with a soft pulse of light, a silent acknowledgement of their shared experiences, and then she was gone. Carried away by the light that would return her to her people, Marcus stood in the desert for a long time after she disappeared, staring at the horizon where the glow had vanished. The air felt different now, quieter, emptier, but also full of memories. He thought about the nights they had spent together, the quiet moments under the stars, the trust they had built, and the gentle ways she had taught him to see beyond fear. Marcus realized that even though she was gone, the lessons she had shared and the bond they had created would remain with him forever. In the following days, Marcus returned to town, but he was changed. He carried a quiet strength and understanding that others noticed. He spoke less of the desert and the mysterious woman, knowing that few would truly understand, but inside him, he felt a profound connection to something greater than himself. He had experienced trust, care, and love in its purest, most patient form. He had learned that extraordinary beings were not dangerous, they were simply different, and they deserved understanding and respect. Marcus sometimes returned to the desert, walking the paths where they had spent nights together. He would look at the rocks, the stars, and the winds, imagining her presence, feeling the faint pulse of energy she had left behind. It was a comforting thought, a reminder that their connection had been real and that it had shaped him in ways he could never forget. Each night, he felt her near, even if only in memory, guiding him, inspiring him to live with patience, empathy, and courage. Months passed, and Marcus continued his life. But the experience in the desert remained central to who he had become. He found joy in small acts of kindness, understanding the feelings of others, and seeing beauty in differences that others might fear. He carried the knowledge that connection, trust, and care could bridge worlds, species, and experiences that seemed impossible to unite. The mysterious woman had left, but the impact she had made on him was permanent. One night, while standing under the stars, Marcus felt a familiar pulse, a gentle reminder of her energy, faint but unmistakable. It was as if she were sending him a message across the distance, a silent acknowledgement that their bond remained intact. Marcus smiled, feeling warmth and reassurance. He understood that true connection did not depend on proximity, and that love and trust could endure even across the vastest distances. Marcus reflected on everything he had learned. Fear and misunderstanding often cause people to judge what they do not know. But patience, empathy, and kindness can transform fear into understanding. Extraordinary beings are not threats. They are opportunities to see the world differently, to grow, and to connect on levels that transcend words. Marcus knew that the lessons of the desert and the mysterious woman would guide him for the rest of his life. As he looked at the moonlit desert, Marcus whispered softly, "Thank you, for trusting me, for letting me see you." The desert was quiet, yet he felt her presence in the wind, in the soft glow of the night, in the pulse of energy that reminded him of her. He knew that even though she had returned to her people, the bond they shared would remain a part of him forever. It was a connection that could not be broken, a story of trust, patience, and love that transcended words, species, and worlds. For Marcus, life would never be the same. The desert had introduced him to a being unlike any other, and through her, he had learned the true meaning of connection, courage, and empathy. She had shown him that even the most extraordinary beings only wanted to be seen, understood, and cared for. And in return, Marcus had given her trust, safety, and friendship. Their story might have ended in distance, but it had created a lasting bond, one that would inspire him for a lifetime.